I've built my career one wedding at a time, turning love stories into unforgettable nights. So, when my best friend Clara asked me to plan hers, I didn't hesitate for a second. I offered her my time, my expertise, and even a big discount, because that's what loyalty looks like to me. She held my hands and said, "Only you could make my dream wedding come true." My chest swelled with pride. I thought I was stepping into the role of her savior, not unknowingly preparing the stage for my own betrayal. We spent hours at the florist's shop, surrounded by roses and lilies that filled the air with sweetness. Clara laughed, tossing her hair as she confessed, "Jess, I'm hopeless at this. I need you to choose." I flipped through swatches, calm and steady, suggesting white orchids. She nodded eagerly, her trust in me almost childlike. The conversation was light, flowing as naturally as champagne bubbles, and I felt the warmth of friendship radiating between us. I never questioned it. I should have. Later, at a small bistro, we sampled menu after menu. Clara wrinkled her nose at the salmon, and I laughed, scribbling in my planner. "You're impossible to please, but that's why I love you," I teased. She leaned forward, giggling. "And that's why I need you." Between bites, we debated DJs. She wanted party chaos. I pushed for elegance. Every decision made me feel proud, as though I was weaving the perfect memory for her. I had no idea, though, that the same trust I was pouring into her would soon cut me deeper than any blade. When Clara and I walked through the reception hall for the first time, I felt that familiar spark of excitement. I pictured her guests mingling under chandeliers, tables glowing with candlelight, music filling every corner. Clara twirled in the empty space, her laughter echoing off the high ceilings. "Jess, it already feels magical," she said, her voice full of gratitude. I smiled, clutching my planner, proud that I could give her this moment. Back then, I still believed I was creating something beautiful for the two of us. Her big day, and my proudest work. The long afternoons melted into evenings filled with swatches, cake tastings, and endless lists. I thrived on it. The rhythm of planning a wedding always gave me energy. Clara leaned on me constantly, sometimes too much, but I didn't mind. "Jess, you're my anchor in this storm," she'd say, sighing dramatically when overwhelmed, and I would laugh, assuring her everything would be perfect. Because in my mind, I wasn't just her planner. I was her confidant, her rock, her sister in spirit. Or so I thought. What I didn't see then were the cracks in that bond. The way her smile lingered a little too long when Daniel's name slipped into our conversations, or how she always insisted on hearing about our anniversary plans. I brushed it off, blinded by years of friendship. I wanted to believe she loved me too much to cross any lines. If only I had listened to that tiny voice in the back of my head whispering, "Be careful." But I silenced it, convincing myself nothing could shatter what we had. One evening, after another marathon planning session, Clara hugged me tightly. "Jess, I don't know how I'll ever repay you," she whispered. Her words sank deep, and I felt a glow of satisfaction. I told her the truth. "Seeing you happy is enough for me." And at that moment I meant it. Every late night, every spreadsheet, every tiny detail, I was pouring my heart into her dream. I believed she valued me as much as I valued her. Daniel, my husband, would often joke about how absorbed I'd become. "I swear, Jess, you're marrying Clara instead of me," he teased one night, grinning as he stole a sip of my wine. I laughed, brushing him off, telling him he was just jealous of my other spouse. Clara laughed too, every time she overheard us. I thought her laughter was innocent, just another layer of our closeness. Now, looking back, I wonder if it was her way of hiding something darker. At the time, though, everything seemed unshakable. Friendship, loyalty, marriage, 3 pillars I believed could never crumble. I was too focused on centerpieces and playlists to notice the subtle tremors under my feet. I didn't know that soon. The same people I trusted most would pull the ground out from beneath me. And the place I thought would shine with celebration would instead become the theater of betrayal. It was supposed to be a special day, not just for Clara, but for me and Daniel too. 5 years of marriage. Half a decade of laughter, late-night talks, and quiet Sunday mornings. We'd planned to celebrate over dinner, but before that, I needed to walk Clara through the reception hall. I thought it would be perfect. Combine business with a little romance. So, I asked Daniel to tag along, and he agreed with that easy smile I'd always trusted. As we entered the ballroom, I couldn't help but admire the space again. Its high ceilings, gleaming floors, the echo of our footsteps carrying like a promise of what was to come. Clara's eyes sparkled as she ran her hand along the edge of a table. "Jess, this is breathtaking," she said. Daniel chimed in with a playful grin, pointing at the mock centerpiece. "So, what's this supposed to be? A forest or a bouquet on steroids?" Clara burst out laughing, teasing me. "See, Jess? Even Daniel knows you're a perfectionist." I laughed with them, though a flicker of irritation crossed my chest. Not because of their words, it was harmless banter, but because I was so determined to make this flawless. This wasn't just Clara's wedding. This was my reputation on the line, my work, my pride. And having Daniel there, watching me in my element, made me feel both nervous and proud. I wanted him to see just how much of myself I poured into the lives of others. Little did I know, he was about to take far more than that from me. Clara wandered around the room with Daniel trailing beside her, the two of them joking as if they were old friends. She teased me about the way I fussed over the placement of the tables, calling me the queen of details. Daniel laughed, shaking his head. "She even rearranges our living room furniture 3 times a month. Trust me, Clara, perfection is her middle name." They shared a smile, and though I laughed along, something about the ease between them made me pause. I brushed it off. After all, wasn't it normal for my husband and my best friend to get along? I was about to adjust a floral arrangement when a staff member rushed in. "Jessica, could you come to the kitchen for a second? We're having a small issue with the catering." My instinct to keep everything flawless kicked in immediately. "Of course," I said, excusing myself. I glanced back at Clara and Daniel, who were standing a little too close, still chuckling at some private joke. "Don't cause trouble while I'm gone," I joked, wagging my finger at them. Clara winked, Daniel smirked, and I slipped away, convinced it was nothing. The kitchen smelled of roasted herbs and garlic, and I buried myself in solving the chef's problem, my planner balanced in my hands. But as I left, retracing my steps toward the ballroom, I noticed a door slightly ajar. The glow of monitors caught my eye, flickering like beacons in the dark. It was the security room. I could have walked past it. I should have. But curiosity tugged at me, whispering that I ought to take just one look. The security technician looked up as I lingered at the door. "Hey, want to see how the setup looks on camera?" he asked casually, gesturing toward the screens. I stepped inside, smiling politely, pretending I was just humoring him. But the moment my eyes landed on the grainy footage, my breath caught in my throat. There, in the center of the ballroom, Clara and Daniel stood close, too close. Her hand brushed his arm, his body leaned toward hers. And then, without hesitation, they kissed. For a second, I felt my entire body turn to stone. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag, and the sound of my heartbeat thundered in my ears. The technician chuckled, oblivious. "Guess they're really close, huh?" I forced my lips into something resembling a smile, swallowing the bile that rose in my throat. "Yeah," I whispered, my voice steady in a way that shocked me. "Really close." Inside, though, a storm was already ripping me apart. I left the room with slow, careful steps, every muscle in my body fighting the urge to collapse. When I returned to the ballroom, Clara and Daniel looked up at me as though nothing had happened, their faces masks of innocence. "So," I said, keeping my tone light, "shall we look at the lighting options next?" My words were smooth, my smile convincing. But deep inside, I was already building something far stronger than rage. I was building patience. Patience for the revenge I knew would taste so much sweeter if I waited. I couldn't shake the image from my mind, the two of them, tangled together in what should have been her wedding space. My chest ached, but my face? Calm as ever. That's the thing about being an event planner. You learn to keep your composure no matter how much chaos is unfolding behind the curtains. So I slipped back into the ballroom, heels clicking against the floor, heart pounding like a war drum. They both turned to me with those practiced smiles, and I matched them, masking my fury behind a professional grin. "All right," I said, holding my clipboard like a shield. "Let's talk lighting. Do you want warm and romantic, or something brighter for the photos?" Clara clasped her hands together, pretending to be deep in thought. Daniel just shoved his hands in his pockets, his lips still glistening as though nothing had happened. I wanted to scream, to throw the vase of lilies across the room, but instead, I nodded at the chandelier, acting every bit the dedicated planner. Inside, though, my thoughts were burning. How long had this been going on? Was it just a fling? Or had every giggle, every innocent glance been a breadcrumb I ignored? I could feel the betrayal curdling into something sharp, something almost electric. They thought I didn't know. They thought I was blind. But I was already sketching a new plan, one that would turn their perfect day into their worst nightmare. The hardest part wasn't what I saw. It was pretending I hadn't seen it. Clara was still raving about the champagne fountain when I walked back in, and Daniel kept nodding along, like he hadn't just betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to keep my hands from trembling as I adjusted the silverware. Every smile I gave was rehearsed, every word carefully measured. Clara turned to me, her voice dripping with sugar. "Jess, you're a saint. Daniel was just telling me how lucky he feels to have you." I almost laughed in her face. Lucky? If only she knew that I'd just watched him kiss her like she was his wife instead of me. But instead of lashing out, I simply met her eyes, tilting my head. "Well," I said smoothly, "we all deserve a little luck, don't we?" She giggled, oblivious, while Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside her. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to fall apart, and I sure as hell wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. If they wanted to play games behind my back, fine. But I had the one thing neither of them had: control of the wedding. And suddenly, every flower, every table setting, every detail I'd so carefully planned became part of a brand new design. One crafted not for joy, but for justice. I remember staring at Clara as she gushed over the ivory drapes, her hand brushing Daniel's arm as if it belonged there. My stomach twisted, but my voice never cracked. "Yes, the ivory brings out the sparkle in your eyes," I said, and she beamed at me like I had just handed her the moon. Daniel avoided my gaze, fiddling with his cufflink. For once, I didn't press him. I wanted him to squirm. On the surface, I was the same old Jessica, taking notes, nodding, adjusting centerpieces with precision. But in my head, a new script was being written, one they'd never see coming. Every lie they told me now was another thread I could weave into the trap. Every secret smile between them only sharpened my resolve. I wasn't going to confront them tonight, not on my anniversary. No, that would be far too merciful. So I smiled, I nodded, and I led them through the hall as though nothing had changed. Inside, though, I was already sketching the outlines of revenge. Quiet, devastating, unforgettable. They thought they were fooling me. They had no idea they were already walking into the masterpiece I was creating just for them. And soon, very soon, the stage I had built with my own hands would expose them both for exactly who they were. From that day on, I became an actress in my own life. To Clara, I was still the tireless best friend, running through menus, floral samples, and gown fittings with a smile plastered on my face. To Daniel, I was still the dutiful wife, laughing at his jokes and clinking glasses over dinner. Neither of them suspected the shift inside me, that every nod, every reassuring word was a brick laid in the foundation of their downfall. Clara would gush, "Jess, you're making me feel like a queen." And I'd smile, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Oh, you'll be remembered forever on this day," I'd reply, my tone sweet, my heart stone cold. Daniel, meanwhile, would kiss my cheek before bed, and I'd murmur, "I'll make sure everything goes exactly as it should." He thought it was devotion. In truth, it was a promise he should have feared. The strange thing was how easy it became. Pretending. Performing. I slipped into the role so naturally that even I was startled by my calm. They thought they were pulling the wool over my eyes, but in reality, I was the one weaving the fabric. And little by little, detail by detail, I began shaping their wedding day. Not into the dream they imagined, but into a stage where their betrayal would finally be exposed. I threw myself into the planning with even greater intensity, which only made Clara adore me more. She'd squeeze my hand after meetings and say, "Jess, I don't know how you're doing all this for me." And I'd smile, answering, "That's what best friends are for." Inside, though, each word was laced with venom. I wasn't her best friend anymore. I was her executioner, carefully sharpening the blade. Nights with Daniel became another layer of performance. He'd ask, "You're not working too hard, are you?" And I'd rest my head on his shoulder, whispering, "It's worth it, for something this important." He thought I meant the wedding. What I really meant was the plan unfurling in my mind, one step at a time. His betrayal had lit a fire in me, and I wasn't going to let it burn out quietly. That's when I found the perfect way to strike. A single, subtle change that would ruin everything without me ever lifting my voice. The invitations. They trusted me with the guest list, the printing, the mailing, every last detail. And so, with the calm of someone folding laundry, I edited the address. Just one line, one switch, one stroke of genius. They would walk into a room expecting cheers and love. Instead, they'd be greeted by silence. The more I worked, the more invisible my revenge became. I smiled through cake tastings, nodded through band auditions, and made sure Clara never doubted my devotion. Every time she hugged me, whispering, "You're my angel," I nearly laughed. Angels don't set traps, Clara, but devils? We know how to wait. And waiting was the sharpest weapon I had. When I held those stacks of invitations in my hands, I felt a surge of power. The ivory envelopes looked innocent, even elegant. No one would suspect that tucked inside was a lie, a false address that would scatter hundreds of guests far from the true venue. With each one I sealed, I whispered to myself, "This is for me." For every stolen kiss. For every secret smile. For every betrayal they thought I'd never see. Daniel, of course, didn't notice a thing. He'd walk past me at the dining table, where I sat stuffing envelopes, and kiss the top of my head. "You're incredible, Jess," he'd murmur, thinking he had fooled me completely. But I only smiled, slipping another finished card into the pile. If only he knew that the stage was nearly set. And the curtain, when it rose, would fall hard, on both of them. The morning of the wedding, I woke up calm, too calm, considering what was about to unfold. Daniel was already gone, off to play the doting groom-to-be, while I dressed slowly, carefully. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me with steady eyes. Not the shattered woman who once froze in a security room. Today wasn't about heartbreak. Today was about justice. When I arrived at the hall, everything was flawless. The flowers glistened with dew, the tables gleamed, and the chandeliers shimmered like frozen stars. It was a masterpiece. My masterpiece. Clara and Daniel walked in together, hand in hand, their smiles wide, their laughter bubbling as though nothing in the world could touch them. For a fleeting second, I almost admired their confidence. Almost. Clara spun in a slow circle, her gown catching the light. "Jess, it's perfect," she breathed, her eyes shining. Daniel added, "This is going to be unforgettable." I smiled, folding my hands in front of me. "Yes," I said softly, my voice like silk. "Unforgettable." They had no idea how true those words were. And as the minutes ticked closer to the ceremony, I felt my pulse quicken, not with nerves, but with anticipation. 15 minutes before the ceremony, Clara was pacing, her veil trembling with every step. "Where is everyone?" she whispered, clutching her bouquet so tightly the stems snapped. Daniel pulled out his phone, dialing furiously. I watched him press it to his ear, his confident smile fading with each unanswered ring. "No one's picking up," he muttered, his voice sharp now. His forehead glistened with sweat, though the hall was perfectly cool. Clara's face crumpled, her lipstick trembling at the corners. "This can't be happening, Jess. They promised they'd come. My mom, my cousins. They wouldn't just not show up." I placed a hand gently on her arm, the picture of calm reassurance. "Strange," I murmured. "Maybe they had trouble finding the place." My words floated between us like smoke, sweet but suffocating. Daniel shot me a sharp look, suspicion flickering in his eyes. The phones began buzzing all at once, vibrating across tables set with untouched champagne flutes. Clara's hands shook as she answered one call after another, her face draining of color. "What do you mean you're at the address and no one's here?" she stammered. I tilted my head, feigning confusion, though inside, my heart was thundering with triumph. The lies were unraveling, and I could almost taste the justice I had baked into every invitation. Clara's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering against the marble floor. "They all went to the wrong place," she whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel cursed under his breath, pacing like a man trapped in a cage. He kept redialing numbers, demanding answers, but every reply was the same: confusion, frustration, guests stranded miles away. The once perfect hall, with its gleaming chandeliers and fragrant flowers, felt eerily hollow. I stood there in silence, watching the panic rise like a tide, drowning them both in the very room I had dressed for their fairy tale. My hands smoothed the tablecloths, straightened the cutlery, as if the order around me could hide the chaos I'd unleashed. Clara's mascara streaked down her cheeks, and Daniel finally turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "Jessica, what do we do?" His voice broke, and for a heartbeat I almost pitied him. Almost. I lifted my chin, my smile calm, my voice steady as glass. "What do you mean? You took my marriage," I said, my words cutting sharper than any knife. "I took your wedding." Their faces crumbled in unison, and the silence of that grand, empty hall became deafening. I turned, my heels clicking against the floor like the final toll of a bell. And as I walked away, leaving them behind in their ruin, one thought echoed in my mind. This was only the beginning.